Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each Thursday, live, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, on Contact Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel. Got a wonderful show today, and this is a great show about astrology, art, and spiritual adventure, I always like to say. We sort of explore all kinds of different angles in the world, and we try to cope with what's going on. One of my favorite phrases is, being forewarned is being forearmed, and I think that we have, in astrology, we have the ability to sort of foresee many different changes that are about to take place within the world. And in the next couple months, we're going to be embarking, every one of us on the planet is going to be embarking on a critical point in the astrological wheel. The zodiacal wheel is going to be entering into when Pluto crosses into 0 degrees Capricorn. Now, 0 degrees Capricorn, and Capricorn is a cardinal sign, and any degree in a cardinal sign, any cardinal sign that has 0 degrees is considered to be a sensitive point. Now, what that means is that it's going to be it's going to have a lot of repercussions, and it's going to be very active amount of time. Now, Pluto, as we all know, the astronomers have said that it wasn't a planet, but my guest and myself, any astrologer on the face of the planet will agree that Pluto is one of the most powerful planets within the zodiacal wheel, as well as the astrology foreplay. It's just one of those things that you've got to understand about. So Pluto is the planet of great transformation and change. It's entering into 0 degrees Capricorn within the next couple months. It's an Earth-based sign, Capricorn is. Pluto is about transformation. It's going to be a big, big change, I think, in the world. We're beginning to feel it already with the cost of oil, global warming, and many other issues are going to be there. So we're going to feel the effects of this. My guest has spent a number of years researching Pluto and knows a great deal about it, and we're also going to speak about some other planets that are out there. You'll be able to call in later with questions about this. In the next couple months, or next couple weeks, rather, I should say, I'm going to be able to offer live charts online at my website, so you'll be able to go in there, enter your birth data very quickly, get a quick reading of your chart, and then we'll be able to start doing some live readings on the air. So be sure you stay tuned for that. I'll make an announcement of that when that comes up, and that'll be at www.chrisflisher.com. That's FLISHER.com, my website. And you can get there from the Contact Talk Radio website as well. Once again, you're listening to Turning of the Wheel. My name's Chris Flisher. This is Contact Talk Radio, and let's not wait any longer. My guest is Donna Cunningham. She has written several books on Pluto in particular, and she's an astrologer who's been world-renowned with many of her publications and stuff like that. She's really very well-versed in this topic, and I'm very excited to have her on. Donna, welcome to Turning of the Wheel.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Yeah. So we have some significant changes coming up, and I think we're all beginning to feel the effects of that. This has been a slow build with Pluto working its way through Sagittarius, and just about at that cusp where Jupiter, actually it was the other day, Jupiter and Pluto were conjunct. Now, conjunct, everybody out there, means that they were at the exact same degree on the wheel together. Now, what did you think? What did you see at that point, Donna, that was significant, and what do you sort of see going forward?
Right. Well, you see, Jupiter is a planet, it's the ruler of Sagittarius, so Sagittarius has these qualities anyway of growth and expansion and optimism and trying to find wisdom and so on. But every sign has certain institutions, certain cultural institutions that it's connected with. And when you see an outer planet moving through a sign, the institutions of that sign go through vast changes. Depending on the nature of that planet, which is Pluto is the most recent one, Sagittarius's institutions are religion, education, publishing, law, foreign countries, and ethics. So during this period from, I think it was 1984 or so,
right,
that Pluto's been in Sagittarius, we've been through a long process of deepest changes in those areas, and not always, I have to say, positive ones, because...
No, they haven't. They've been very difficult. The pendulum has swung both directions. What I have found is that, we all know this, is that Pluto sort of swings back and forth. It goes retrograde for a while.
Extremes, yeah.
So there's a lot of that going on.
Yes. So just in that period of time, you see, Pluto has a lot to do with wealth and power. On the level of world changes, it has a lot to do with wealth and power. On a personal level, it's looking deep within, going through a psychological transformation, a kind of rebirth and death and rebirth.
Right.
When you're talking about vast portions of the global economy and the world and so on, we've seen that, for instance, education at one point was affordable to everybody, and now it is really almost becoming the prerogative of the wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Because people who have to borrow money, for instance, for their education, may wind up as much as $100,000 in debt by the time they've graduated.
Right, and the odds of them getting that paid off very quickly are very slim. So we need to subsidize that in some way. And also there's been a huge shift in sort of the international currency. The dollar, which was once highly valued, has reached an all-time low.
Yeah.
The economy of the world has shifted from sort of the Western-based culture to the Eastern-based cultures. And we've also seen, I read an interesting article the other day about what they predict would happen is that the oil-producing countries are creating they've generated such wealth and such expansion and growth in their own, so these huge building structures that they have going on in Dubai and countries like that they are actually now consuming a lot of their own oil rather than exporting it. So that's going to be less and less available to us. There's another shift that's inevitable there.
Yes, and religion has changed drastically. It's become, you see, Pluto can have a lot to do with control, the issue of control.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's been this upsurge of, highly conservative religions, and that's not just Christian, it's Muslim, it's, a lot of conservatism has come up in religions. And we've gone from small churches to these mega churches, a word that Sagittarius might encompass would be mega.
Yeah, absolutely. And in 1984, and back in that time, the church was not part. I mean, the church and the state were fairly well divided. They weren't. Religion was not. I mean, it's always been an issue on the governmental and the political platform. Not to the extent that it is today. Today, it is a major talking point for candidates. We've got two major front runners, Mitt Romney and Huckabee. Both are campaigning on a strong religious platform plank, and that has not been there for very many years, and it's unusual. That's a significant place, a part of that whole change there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just the whole balance of power between us and foreign countries has shifted vastly. For instance, I was hearing the other day that most of the debt that we've incurred, national debt we've incurred in terms of the war, has been money loaned to us by China. And
that's not a very wise investment on their part, I'm afraid. They're not going to get that money back too quickly.
Well, no, we haven't loaned them. They've loaned us.
Yes, no, I know
Yes.
exactly. But then that's going to put us in a terrible spot with regard to them having to be, and they're going to be making huge amounts of money off of us as a result.
Exactly. And even the whole controversy about toys that come from China. We kind of, the government is ducking that a little bit and saying, oh, well, we don't have the authority, we don't have the means. And the other thing is that a lot of, I saw a whole segment on 60 Minutes about how a vast amount of counterfeit medications are coming from China and other Asian nations.
Yes, I believe that true. Yes,
So
that's right. I've seen that.
True, they were showing it, as I said, they did an investigative report that many of these expensive medications that maybe you're getting them through the internet or discount places or whatnot, they're actually counterfeit and they have no medical value.
Right. And people are still buying them. So these are all similar, the same institutions that we had mentioned earlier, sort of hospitals, governments, large banks, large corporations. They're all going through this. And they also seem to be coming to terms with sort of an earth-based reality here. There seems to be sort of a focus on that, obviously, because Capricorn is a sign of it's an earth sign. It's a cardinal earth sign. And it's a
reality.
Yeah, it's a critical planet in the zodiacal chart because it's also about hard reality. It's about hard work, and I think that we are going to be faced with some very harsh realities over the next couple of years, especially with regard to finances, fuel, and a few other things. We may find ourselves harking back to an earlier time when we had to be more sufficient and self-sufficient with regard to land.
Again, because Capricorn, you see, the signs that are next to one another on the chart wheel are very importantly related. Jupiter and Sagittarius have to do with expansion and growth, and Capricorn and its ruling planet Saturn have to do with contraction.
Right.
So we've gone through this cycle of expanding and expanding, and everybody playing into that a Sagittarian optimism. Oh, it's easy money, it's easy credit. We're always going to be affluent this way. We don't have to worry. We'll pay for it later, Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, just as the energy kind of moves into that cuspal range between Sagittarius and Capricorn, all of a sudden the bankruptcy laws were changed, and the credit, the interest rate on credit keeps going up until, some people, if they start missing payments and so on, they wind up with a 30% interest rate,
Right, because the credit keeps accumulating, and they're going to have a huge financial crisis. Several banks are going to default. It's wreaked havoc on the stock market. The stock market has been a wild roller coaster, going from highs to lows on any sweeping day, regardless of the industry, too. I mean, there's some industries that tend to stay fairly stable throughout, obviously oil, but I think with the cost of oil skyrocketing, there isn't a single thing in the face of this planet that is not affected by the cost of oil.
Exactly, the basics.
It's just basically either from trucking, no matter what product it may be, it has to get to someplace via something that was driven by oil, so it's always going to be affected.
Yes, I've been telling people for a while, at least 6 months, to use this period of time when Pluto is ending its time in Sagittarius and moving into Capricorn, and then it moves backward for a while, and then it finally gets into Capricorn for the next 12 years, 10 years, whatever it is. But use this period of time to get yourself out of debt.
Right. Exactly. That is rule number one. I had a conversation with a very good friend of mine today about that exact topic, and it's critical that we do that now. Whatever it may take to do that, personal credit card debt is going to be outrageous. You've got to work on getting that down. Try to find yourselves in fixed mortgage rates rather than adjustable rate mortgages. Mm-hmm. Get yourself some stability, even if it's long-term stability. You've got to stop and think about mortgages as just paying rent and not trying to pay off your house, because it still is an investment. What you want to do is get yourself into a position where you're able to manage your daily life in case there is a recession, in case the belt gets tightened, which I think it's going to happen. I certainly wouldn't want to be the next president coming in, although you could argue, well, it's an easy act to follow, because all you have to do is a few good things and you'll end up coming out smelling like a rose, rather than it's an easy act to follow in that regard. But I think the changes are going to be huge, and people are going to be caught short. The dissolution of 401ks, a lot of money has been squandered, and the debt is outrageous. The debt of this country is outrageous. We were once at a surplus. We are now in the largest deficit in the history of the United States because of an ill-founded war that's been waged right now. So I think that the planet and this country and large institutions are going to feel the crunch of this. Now, Donna, you've written extensively about Pluto, and I've read many of your books about Pluto and its impact. It was discovered in the 1930s, and its impact, specifically in Capricorn, is significant because we've got Saturn opposing it, and we've got Jupiter there at the same time. Now, Jupiter, as you mentioned earlier, is about expansion. Now, expansion can be positive expansion. It can also be negative expansion. It depends upon what the aspects are.
The thing is, the characteristics of any sign or any planet are neutral, but they can be carried to extremes. If you carry Sagittarian qualities like expansion to an extreme, and it just becomes greed and spending for the sake of spending and living too large just because you think you can do it,
Exactly.
That's expansion. Optimism and expansion are good things, but it also has to be tinged by reality, And likewise, Capricorn has its positives and its negatives, and a lot of times the negatives are just taking the positive qualities and carrying them to an extreme.
Right.
For instance, there's a lot of emphasis with Capricorn on material gain. And you see, in recent years, in the late 80s through the 90s, there were planets in Capricorn at that time, too. They were Neptune and Uranus. And that was kind of the beginning of this overemphasis on status and position and having, possessing things. And
yeah, that was sort of the Reagan era. There was a huge period of time where people were very into affluence. It was sort of like they shifted from the sort of the hippie generation, which was all about, living off the land, to all of a sudden people were driving around in BMWs and stuff, and it was, they were all running around playing the stock market, and it was a very different shift. It certainly was very different.
Yeah, different in values.
Yeah.
Anyway, Pluto's more down to earth, I'd have to say, in its action than either. Neptune is very nebulous, and it's all about your dreams and your ideals, and you fool yourself into thinking that, by becoming, by even looking affluent, you are affluent and you are somebody,
That's very much of an American phenomenon, I think. There's sort of like, this is what this branding is all about. People tend to walk around with brand names on, and it gives them a false sense of security and also a false sense of identity, I think, more importantly. Yes. And that's an elusive sort of quality, very accurately put by yourself about that. And then Neptune is very much about illusions and delusions, and you combine that sort of emphasis in that area, and you really do have a false sense of, people driving massive Hummers because they want to appear to be a certain way. They associate themselves with the brands that they buy. It's an extension of their personality in a very sort of unusual way. You don't see that, I don't think, in other parts of the world, although I'm not an expert in that. It certainly seems unusual. But I think the point we'd like to make here, Donna, I'm sure you'd agree with me, is that I think that any time there's a significant amount of change afoot, as we certainly are coming into this time right now, I always like to use the analogy of judo. And so you have this energy that we see is coming towards us. The idea is to sort of harness that and turn it back on it so that it comes out in some sort of a positive, constructive, forward-moving motion, so that we do evolve and push society and humanity further into areas where we sort of need to go. And this might be just the wake-up call we need to sort of push us into those green areas where we start investing in solar power and getting away from this oil, petroleum-based.
That's fine. That's the thing. Saturn is in Capricorn, which, will be in, Saturn is in Virgo, which is one
Earth sign, yeah.
Sign, and Pluto in Capricorn is another. So we're going to have to get down to basics and get back to what's real. Get back to doing what is just absolutely essential in order to make people's lives solid. On a personal level, get back to what will make your life solid and manageable and affordable. And also even on our national level. Get back to investing in the earth and investing in, people's basic needs.
Yeah, we've evolved way too far from the land. I think that we sort of, in doing so, we've wreaked havoc on the planet, as Al Gore has made us all aware, and as we can evidently see within the polar ice cap is melting. There's a lot of these things that are very, very strong signals, and we are at a real crux of the evolution, I believe, in as much as that. If we don't wake up and pay attention now, we could find ourselves in a significantly dangerous spot, I think. And I don't think that's overstated. I really don't. No.
Well, Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, has to do with consequences. Father Time. We're headed towards the New Year's and all that. But Father Time is really the what Saturn is about. Saturn
the taskmaster, I call him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so we're going to start reaping consequences, which is why I'm saying take this window between now and May, when Pluto's going back and forth between Sagittarius and Capricorn, and get yourself on a solid foundation. Cut up your credit cards, for God's sake,
Exactly.
Start paying off your debt. Keep track of what you're actually spending your money on, because, the Sagittarian thing is, it's all going to work out. It's, the money will come somehow. God will provide, blah, 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 all that kind of optimism, which is, you have to have a positive framework, but you also have to be real.
Right, and Capricorn is all about being real. If ever there was a sign, I think it's the one that's probably the most real. And it is about restraint. It's certainly about restraint. It's about debt consolidation. I don't think I could stress that enough. I mean, from what I've read about astrology and what I know about astrology, I would say to anybody, now is the time to consolidate any kind of personal debt you can. Pay off those cars, get those credit cards, cut them in half, get yourself back on and start saving, because that's what's going to save us eventually. It's having that ability. Because if you give away too much money through credit cards, you're giving away your power, and that power is going to be required very soon in order to get through this next time.
Yeah. If I could just suggest a couple of places to look on the internet for help in getting your debts under control. One of them is there's a program on A&E on Saturday morning called Big Spender.
Right.
And most of the people on that show have a really good income. They're professional people and whatnot, but their spending has just gotten to be an addiction,
Yeah.
They may spend $2,000 or $3,000 a month more than they actually earn. So he has a system, and I don't remember his name, but it's if you go to A&E, look at Big Spender. And another one is on Oprah Winfrey's site. There's a thing called a debt diet that has an awful lot of good information on it. Because, believe me, if you don't get your spending under control, you don't get solid, you will probably, have some problems in this coming era. But if you're thrifty, if you're conservative with your spending, if you only spend on what's important, forego some luxuries for a while now, then you can stay safe and solid.
Right.
I always say that Saturn, if you're good to Saturn, Saturn will be good to you. No, if you take care of Saturn, Saturn will take care of you, and that's also has to do with Capricorn, you see, because Saturn rules it.
Right. It's very valid advice there. And what we're trying to talk about, I just want to let everybody know what we're doing. You're listening to Turning of the Wheel. It's a show about astrology, art, and spiritual adventure. And we're talking today with Donna Cunningham. My name's Chris Flisher. We're on Contact Talk Radio. If you have a question about this topic in particular, you can call 1-877-230-3062 and ask a question about this, because, it is something, especially with regards to personal finance. If you have any sign, any of your significant signs are in cardinal signs, or if you have some sort of situation in your finances that has got something that is daunting or overwhelming, now would be the time to sort of address that in any way you can. That's what we're trying to say. Yeah. This is the beauty of astrology. It sort of gives you that ability to get some insight as to where things are going, and it's very valid. You can see the proof is there. The subprime mortgage considerations, the stock market volatility, the outrageous price of oil, the national debt are all huge Pluto, Sagittarius, Capricorn indicators of what is going on and what is to come.
Yes, I want to say something particularly for the people born in the early 1960s.
Right.
Because they had Pluto in early Virgo.
Right.
And Saturn has been going over that, and it's kind of like in whatever ways you may be shooting yourself in the foot, you kind of have to take a good look at it. But I have seen so many people, as Saturn went through Leo and going over Pluto, in Leo, and now going into Virgo, so many people that just kind of bite the bullet, get a hold on, get a grip on, and start paying attention to their finances, and they come through it, and they get on a safe, sound. I did it myself early on when Saturn was first in Leo. But here it is, and the thing is that Saturn is in an Earth sign, and it's making a very favorable. It will be making a very favorable aspect to Pluto in the other Earth sign. And so this is really a time when you can get yourself solid and sound and really, really build something that's going to last, not something that's just built on pipe dreams and optimism.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point which you're making there. You don't want to be too delusional about what your dreams are. I think that Capricorn is a very pragmatic sign, and Saturn makes it be pragmatic, and it's sort of about accountability. And with Jupiter and Pluto both moving into Capricorn, it's going to be making what we call in astrology a trine. So it's going to be a favorable aspect between Saturn, which is in an Earth-based sign of Virgo, and then Pluto and Jupiter in Capricorn, also an Earth-based sign. And so I think what it means is sort of like learn to be self-sufficient. Don't depend upon institutions to hold you through. Learn self-sufficiency. Learn independence. And learn, the value of education, hard work, saving money, paying off credit card debts are all things that are going to be valid over the next couple of years. And and if you embrace that rather than fear it, if you embrace that sort of mentality of change in a positive way, you can get through it very well and come out of it very much a new person with a renewed sense of purpose and a sense of identity. If you resist it and run away from it and hide from it, it will bite you.
Well, I have to say myself, as I say, I went through some paying off my debts and things. Pluto was sitting on Saturn was sitting on my Pluto for about 8 months or so.
Yeah, I had the same one.
Yeah. I have to say that I feel real, and it makes me feel safe, and it makes me feel I don't have that kind of nightmarish sense of my money falling and so on. So you see, Saturn has its rewards, and Capricorn. Saturn and Capricorn are kind of used in a way interchangeably because Saturn is the planet that rules Capricorn. So the message of Saturn and of Capricorn is get solid, get real, and you'll build something that can last. Not buy to this year's or this season's fashions and they're in the closet that's already too stuffed and so on. Get real about what do you really need. What do you have to do to make your children's future. Capricorn has to do with old age.
Yeah, the baby boom generation is just started collecting Social Security, and they're going to be faced with, have their investments paid off. I think you just touched on a very interesting topic I want to go back to for a second. It's sort of about, it's about hard work, it's about sacrifice, but when you do that, the rewards will come later, and you won't have that impending sense of, like I think you mentioned it, you summarized it, that sort of that sleepless nights of worrying about debt. And how are we going to make ends meet? How are we going to do this? It's harder now to declare bankruptcy than it used to be. It's much more complicated than it has been in the United States.
Wealthy in order to declare bankruptcy.
Right, and if you're not wealthy and you're in a situation like that, it's going to be very difficult for you. Yeah. So you need to be sort of bite the bullet. I think it's a very good phrase, an apt phrase for describing where we are. And you sort of got to hunker down, take new directions, build solid platforms in ideas such as education, invest in wise things, and put your time into things rather than running from it. Running from it will get you nowhere. I think you've just got to face this. And this is especially true for the baby boom generation who have got 401ks or do not have 401ks, who have got kids in college or do not have kids in college, who have aging parents who they're sort of faced with. It's going to be a significant time of sacrifice. It may require some consolidation of certain things and families. And that's where we see most of the real optimism.
Right. Now, the predominant generation in the workplace now are the people born in the 1960s who had Pluto in an Earth sign, Virgo, and also had Uranus in Virgo. And these are trine. At some point you will be getting trine. That's an easy, that's a productive, even a fortunate aspect. But when you look at the really practical, solid Earth signs like Virgo and Taurus and Capricorn, it's usually that you've made your own luck by being very, very hardworking and attending to realities and to details and so on. So for that 60s generation, some of them are going to do very well with Pluto and Capricorn because they've they've paid their dues. They've laid the groundwork. They have the requisite skills,
Mm-hmm.
And they also have Virgo is a mutable sign, so people with a lot of Virgo can pick up almost any skill they need,
Yeah. There's a certain there's a great deal of adaptability and flexibility there, and they're able to blend and move with the changing times, which is one of the wonderful things about a mutable sign, is they have that adaptability. We're speaking to Donna Cunningham today. My name's Chris Flisher. You're listening to Turning of the Wheel. We're talking about astrology, art, and spiritual adventure, especially astrology today, because we're talking about a significant event that is going to be unfolding over the next few months and continue on for the next couple of years, and that is Pluto's ingress. Ingress means movement into the sign of Capricorn. So we're going to be seeing this Pluto, which is considered to be a very, very powerful planet within the astrology Congress, that it is one of significant change, it's one of significant transformation. And the idea here is to sort of look at that sort of transformation and take this advice that we offer you, get yourself consolidated with your debt, consolidate as much as you possibly can, and try to find a way to be more self-sufficient in ways that deal with the earth, I would think, whether it means putting in, curtains, insulated windows, if it means, putting solar energy into your house, anything that's based in that area.
Trading the Humvee in on a compact,
Yes, exactly, yeah. Recycling is a good thing to put your time into. If you have any questions about this topic or concerns about this topic, you can call at 1-877-230-3062. I would say this is not the time to expand in that regard. It's the time to sort of hold in, reduce debt, and hunker down for the time that's coming in.
Right, I say a good word is consolidate. Listen, I want to tell you something interesting about that 29 degrees of Sagittarius.
Right.
When I saw the chart of Rudy Giuliani, he has the four angles of his chart, hence the first and the seventh, the four important angles which create events at 29 degrees of Sagittarius, Gemini, Virgo.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I said, "Oh my God, I think he's going to be president."
Yeah. Well, it's hard to believe, but he, if he is going to be president, it's going to be because he has not got himself embroiled in the political battle here of religion.
Yeah.
He's sort of avoided now the battlegrounds. It's way too early to predict this, but you see things, and things can change dramatically. The caucuses don't really mean that much. Things can change dramatically. Barack Obama is riding high today, and so is Mitt Romney, but that could easily reverse. I mean, I'm not going to express political views in the air, but things can change very quickly, and it's difficult to judge now what's going to happen then.
But I'm not a fan of Giuliani's. I wouldn't say that. But when I saw how strong Pluto's going to be in his chart in this next year, he is definitely a player.
Oh, he's a player. I think he's a player. I do believe that. And it would be interesting to see if he were able to. I mean, his only real argument is 9/11, so he's been running on that.
No,
and that's
he ran the biggest city in the world practically,
Yeah, he did, and that's a valid, resume thing to have. It's not like running a country, but it does have some, I suppose it's like running some small countries. It's like running Liechtenstein or something like that, But 10 million people. There's probably many countries that are smaller than that as well. But I think it's going to be an interesting climate that's going to change. But whoever gets that job is going to be in for some tough times. And I'm concerned about how we extrapolate ourselves from Iraq. How do we get this debt back in order? I mean, this country is derivative of all of the people who are in it. And if all this debt is mounting up, we have this huge debt on a national level, that is simply mirrored.
Right, and on a personal level as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It goes all the way up and all the way down,
Yeah.
Another interesting person I found, Al Gore, has Jupiter at 28 Sagittarius. So
interesting.
At the point when he was getting the Oscar and the Nobel Prize, Pluto was going over that.
Yeah.
And
it was going over which point in his chart?
Jupiter.
Oh, it was. He had the Pluto transiting Jupiter.
And he had also the moon at 3 Capricorn. So we may not have heard the last of him,
No. Oh, no, I don't think we have either. I think, well, he made a very strong statement when he took at the acceptance speech.
Yes.
He went out and he actually, he actually lashed out at the United States for being slow to operate on this commission that's happening in Bali, though, trying to get the emissions under control.
Right. He's there in Bali, and today I saw him on television saying, essentially, that the United States is standing in the way of the world's, efforts toward the environment.
Exactly. So we are instead of being pioneers and leading the charge here as we should, we are actually stalling it, and we are one of the largest consumers of energy in the world, and we are just. We are setting a terrible example with that regard. We used to be the heroes of the world. We've turned that whole corner and made ourselves into a difficult situation now. It's very unsettling.
Yes, I'd have to say the whole political situation in the world is very challenging.
Right. But one of the things that we find with these sort of, what I see is sort of this pendulum swinging back and forth. And as a result of the pendulum swinging, we go from one extreme to the other, and then you enter this period of time where the pendulum enters that center, and you begin to swing back. And life has always been about, this is why I use the term turning of the wheel. The wheel does turn, it does have its highs and its lows, and we're probably going to be coming out of this terrible trough, this terrible low, and headed for a time of more optimism, especially with, Pluto moving into Capricorn, trining, which is a favorable aspect to Saturn, accountability. If we do our lessons well, and if we pay heed to the changes that are afoot, and we are proactive in positive ways about that, the results will be positive. And I think that's where we need to focus on, is sort of the positive. We're not trying to say doom and gloom here. We're simply trying to allow people to understand what it means to be forewarned. Because with that information that we see coming up on the horizon, you can prepare yourself for what is coming. And then when the time does come, it will be much less difficult for you to...
I'd have to say, Chris, that when I say these things about Pluto in Capricorn, I do it at the risk of being viewed as negative.
Right. I can see that's difficult. I understand.
There are a lot of people in astrology and in the whole New Age that think, as long as you're visualizing positive and you're doing affirmations and all of that, you will draw to yourself a positive outcome, and that is true to a certain extent. But when you are, on the other hand, doing self-sabotaging things like going $50,000-$60,000 in debt, on your credit cards and so on, then no amount of affirmation is going to get you out of that hole.
You do yourself a disservice.
So be real and think positively.
Mm-hmm. And be pragmatic. Don't go out of, don't rush out immediately and sign a loan to get yourself out of debt, and don't act in haste. Get some good counsel with regard to this, because this really is going to be significant. Now, of the other planets that you see major changes happening aside from Pluto, we also have Uranus is going to be moving into is forward motion now. So is Neptune is going forward. They tend to go back and forth all through their cycles. And
I make a big study of different generations and subgenerations. And so one of the subgenerations I've done a lot of looking at are the people born in the 60s and especially the middle 1960s, with Pluto and Uranus quite close together. And many of them even have Saturn opposite that in Pisces and Chiron and so on. And so right now, Uranus is getting into the middle, is in the middle of Pisces, the opposite sign from Virgo.
Right.
And so it's, on the one hand, kind of turbulent. There's a lot of turbulence there with the people born in the 60s in terms of because Virgo is the sign of work. And so there's a lot of turbulence because the workplace is really actually a very corrupt often, and you're a cog in the machine. But the interesting thing I saw the other day was that there is a vast and growing number of people who are self-employed, have their own little business.
Right.
And that is so perfect for this Pluto-Uranus generation. it's like almost. I'm very bad with numbers, but I would almost say it was something like almost like 40-50%
of people born in that time were self-employed.
In general, but since they're the biggest group in the workplace now, they're the age that's the biggest group in the workplace.
Right, I see.
A growing number of people, of such people, are getting their own business.
Well, it's wise to do that, especially if it's an earth-based business and they can prepare themselves for the future. They have much more control that way. You're not living at the whim of some corporation who can change in a heartbeat, change their tune in a heartbeat. You're sort of much more self-sufficient. You tend to work harder, which is definitely a Capricornian trait.
Right.
It's all about, and Saturnian trait is hard work. If you work hard, and you made a very good point earlier too, Donna, is that if you're kind to Saturn, Saturn will be kind to you. And good work and nothing, sort of like nothing worth having comes easily. And if you put the time and effort into it up front, the rewards are really there. It's sort of delayed gratification in some ways. And putting off, some purchases until later when you're better off and the economy's better off is really wise. It's sort of, don't be impulsive at a time like this, and Saturn will reward you if you do your diligence.
Right. Well, one thing about this group in Virgo, as I say, born in the 60s, with at least Pluto and Uranus in Virgo, some of them have, the sun and moon and all of that, is that Uranus has to do with diversification. And people who have a strong Uranus in their chart, in the career part, have this capacity for reinventing themselves periodically.
Right.
You think of people like Elton John, who his style continually evolves, and some of these people who just continually. Johnny Depp is a big.
Yes, very good example. Yeah. Reinventing
himself, and he has the Mars, Pluto, and Uranus in Virgo. But the big asset that these Virgo people types have is that if they go into their own business, build into it some diversification, so that if one line of work is slow, then you pump up the other one, and so on.
Right. Keep yourself, spread your wealth around.
In fact, I saw. I ran into a book the other day. I'm so bad with names and memories, but this is something called a slash career. Meaning,
okay.
I'm an astrologer / writer / web designer.
Right, exactly, and then the result of that, you're exactly right. I'm an artist / astrologer / radio host.
Yes, exactly.
And so that will all, one of them. If one doesn't succeed, you fall back on the other, and you sort of spread your wealth around that way, and forge a future that is one of self-sufficiency, not dependent upon the whims of a corporation where you could easily be let go.
Right.
Now, you can easily start some of this stuff on the side while you're doing that. While you are in corporations, you can work.
Because the mutable signs have this ability to keep learning and keep adding on more skills and to transfer skills from one place to another. In other words, you learn on the job, like let's say you're, quote, stuck being a salesman. Well, when you get your own business and your own profession that you want to follow, that experience as a salesperson helps you to promote your own work, So that's
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a gift of the mutable signs. And, of course, Uranus is in Pisces, which is a mutable sign, So
it's very valuable to know this stuff, and it's always been, I think, the case of sort of being forewarned. I do say that quite a bit, but I think it's pretty valuable to know that, because it's not like we're playing voodoo here or trying to, paint the future or looking into a crystal ball. Some of these things are just hard, fast realities, and it's very difficult to dispute the reality of what's happened when history repeatedly supports this and corroborates what we're talking about. This is very valid. And, we can already, when you see the storm clouds, and I don't mean storm clouds in a negative way, it's more of a euphemism for just change that is coming. When you see these things gathering, you have to pay heed to them and prepare yourself for them. And that's the beauty of it. You can either, prepare yourself and adapt to the change and make the change successfully, or you can be left behind. That's what you want to do, is be obviously there. We're talking today with Donna Cunningham. We're talking about Pluto in Capricorn and sort of what we can expect. This next year, the year 2008, is going to be significant in many ways. We're going to see, obviously, a huge shift in the government policies and our status in the world. The dollar has sunk considerably. We've got a new political party. Well, you don't know that yet, but we've got a new political, campaign underway, and so we're going to see some significant changes. And I wonder, I mean, would you dare predict, Donna? I certainly wouldn't, but I'm curious what your views are on the idea of what's going to happen with the election.
No.
Have you done any research?
Well, everybody's speculating, and the problem with astrology is that, for instance, I believe a lot of us thought Gore would win, and maybe, in fact, he did. But what not being president has done for him is to put him in a position to make this massive effort and this impact on the global climate situation.
So instead of becoming a national hero, he becomes a planetary hero.
Exactly, yes.
Which is really, and I hope that he can grasp that and see that his impact is, in fact, planetary, and it's for all of humanity, and so therefore his role is significantly larger and better. You don't always know where this change is going to come in your chart. Oftentimes, we study charts and we look at them. Don and I both do this all the time, looking at charts, trying to figure out where things are and where they're happening. And sometimes, these things come about in unusual ways, which always end up for the good. I mean, I think.
Yeah. And here's the thing: there is a logic behind what's going on in a chart, but when it comes down to actually predicting, you can give a person a range of things that might be happening, but the best indication of which one of those tracks is going to unfold is to know what they're doing right now with those planets. In other words, a person who is using this expansion of Sagittarius in a really self-destructive way, then I would worry, more than if the person was using that expansive energy to keep learning and to keep growing and teaching others and really expanding in a sound and solid way. So every planet and every sign has positive and negative ways of being used, has constructive applications, has self-destructive applications. And the best we can do is kind of illuminate and dialogue with the person to see how are they using that? Are they shooting themselves in the foot, or are they being sound and sensible and wise?
I think any investment, investment's a good word, I think, and investment doesn't necessarily mean monetary investment. It's sort of an investment in time. If you invest in your own future, you educate yourself in ways which will benefit yourself down the line and allow you some sort of degree of self-sufficiency, I think you really are laying the groundwork for a very satisfying life and one of security as well.
Right, because as I said, Capricorn is about one's old age and senior years. And let's say that you're 50, 55, even 60. It's not too late to really get yourself sound. Take care of your, get savings, solid foundation for yourself for those years. It's not too late.
Yeah, or at least make a plan that would allow you to live in a self-sufficient manner. Maybe Social Security will not be there for the baby boom generation. I don't know. It's too early to tell, but I know some people are collecting it now. But whether or not it will be there or not, I think the idea that I think it's conceivable that the age is going to be pushed up by the time we get there. I mean, I'm in my 50s now, and I know that by the time I get to be 67, it'll probably be 71 or 72. That they will bump the age up for collecting Social Security. So you're going to have to work longer, which in some ways is good. As long as you take care of yourself and you're healthy, you'll be able to work longer. But you want to be able to be self-sufficient in a way that allows you to supplement your income as you get older, whether that's some sort of craft work or outside trade that you can sort of broaden yourself. It's that mutability of being able to be more flexible that's going to behoove you the most when it comes to that.
Yes. Now, Chris, is it time for me to tell the people about my book?
You certainly can, by all means, yeah.
Okay.
He's chomping at the bit here. Donna Cunningham is chomping at the chomping at the bit to talk about her book. So please do.
Well, one group that I'm very proud of is a trilogy, a 3-volume set of books about these outer planets that we've been talking about, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And one of them is about how they are used in the career sense. That's Volume 1. Volume 2 is about how they show up in relationship issues. And Volume 3 is about these groupings that I've been talking about, like the people born in the mid-1960s with Pluto and Uranus together, or the children born in the 80s and 90s with Uranus and Neptune together. So my books are all e-books for environmental reasons, and you can get a sampler of them and have a look at the table of contents and so on at Moon Maven Publications. That's Moon is in the sky, Maven meaning expert, publications.com.
Yeah, Moon Maven, M-A-V-E-N, moonmavenpublications.com is where you'll find Donna's books. I've read several of her books. I've read, especially about Pluto in particular, because I had a very significant Pluto transit, and it was very comforting to know that some of these things were supposed to happen. Now, Donna, before we move on, I want to talk briefly about the 0 degrees Capricorn. As I mentioned earlier, any cardinal sign at the 0 degree point is a very sensitive point. There's a few other as well. What do you envision at that 0 point that people would be best prepared for? I mean, I certainly have my opinions, but I'm curious what yours are.
Well, again, moving from the last degree of Sagittarius to the very first degree, 0 degrees of Capricorn, is a wake-up call. Mm-hmm. People who've been living in this haze of optimism and kind of being hypnotized by spending and so on. As Pluto moves into Capricorn, very first degrees of Capricorn, we're going to see some events, I think, and I don't care to predict what they are because I don't know, and a climate of the time that will say, wake up, people.
Right. Now, this is going to happen right around the first and second week of February of 2008 is when it'll first move in there. So within about 2 months from now, I would even go out on a limb and say we could see some sort of financial collapse. We could see any number of things that happen. It could be, but it's going to be a wake-up call of some sort, especially. Now, the reason the 0 degree is in a cardinal sign is critical is because it's it's at one of the 4 major angles in the chart. And that is a significant change and entry into there. It means a shift of energy. And the energy that shifts into that is one of cardinality. Cardinality is about new beginnings. It's about starting things. It's about initiation. And it's new beginnings. So it's, what I like to say is that every beginning, the beginning is at one with the end. And if the end is the 29 degrees Sagittarius, the beginning will be the 0 degrees Capricorn, which will signify a significant shift in many different areas.
Right. Now, if you think about it, those 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, those are the solstice and equinox points in the year.
That's correct, yes.
0 Capricorn is the same as the winter solstice.
Right.
It is the darkest time of the whole year, and it's the beginning of winter. And yet, if we didn't have a winter, the Earth couldn't survive because the Earth and the plants and so on need this resting period. And
so these are necessary. Points of the compass.
Cycle.
But and they sort of signify the 4 seasons as well. And you got the summer solstice, you've got the vernal and the autumnal equinoxes as well at those same points.
But there's something in the human physiology and in the way that the Earth is, that there's actually a wisdom in those 4 seasons. And so we do need our winter time to kind of rest and get over all the hard work of harvest time and so on, and just be a little quieter And look where...
And, the important thing about the concept of what I've always mentioned on this is to sort of be open to possibilities, be open to ideas, be open to being flexible. Even if you're a fixed sign, you can still have some flexibility there because of the fact that if you are more flexible and more adaptable, you will survive much better. There's no question about it. And it's that ability to survive that will get you through.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel. We've got about 2 minutes left here, Donna. I really appreciate you coming on. I want to let people know one more time about your books and your website. It's moonmavenpublications.com is Donna's site, and she's got 3 e-books there that are very good with regard to these topics about Pluto particularly, and how you can best harness that energy and move forward. I've got a very exciting show next week. I've got a Esperit Ananas is coming on from a wonderful artistic colony in Italy called Damanhur, which I heartily hope you can all join me on. It's going to be a fascinating topic about what I could possibly see as the future of the planet. This little community in Italy has forged an arts and spiritual community that sort of harkens where we're all going. You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel. My name's Chris Flisher. If you want a reading at any time, you can always go to my website or email me at chris@chrisflisher.com. And Donna is not available for readings, but you can purchase her books from her website.
Yes,
so I encourage you.
I also have books for beginners and intermediate.
Yes, she does. So it's been wonderful to have you on, Donna. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you on the web, hopefully.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody, and be open to possibilities.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher.